It was October 1st in the year 1890. An act of Congress created Yosemite National Park, home of such natural wonders as Half Dome and the giant sequoia trees. Environmental trailblazer John Muir and his colleagues campaigned for the congressional action, which was signed into law by President Benjamin Harrison, our 23rd president, and paved the way for generations of hikers, campers, and nature lovers, along with countless "Don't Feed the Bear" signs. Native Americans were the main residents of the Yosemite Valley, located in California's Sierra Mountain Range, until the 1849 gold rush brought thousands of non-indigenous miners and settlers to the region. Tourists and damage to Yosemite Valley's ecosystem followed. In 1864, to ward off further commercial exploitation, conservationists convinced President Abraham Lincoln to declare Yosemite Valley and the Mariposa Grove of giant sequoias a public trust of California. This marked the first time the U.S. government protected land for public enjoyment, and it laid the foundation for the establishment of the national and state park systems. Yellowstone became America's first national park in 1872. In 1889, John Muir discovered that the vast meadows surrounding Yosemite Valley, which lacked government protection, were being overrun and destroyed by domestic sheep grazing. Muir and Robert Underwood Johnson, a fellow environmentalist and influential magazine editor, lobbied for national park status for the large wilderness area around Yosemite Valley. On October 1st of the following year, Congress set aside over 1,500 square miles of land, about the size of Rhode Island, for what will become Yosemite National Park, America's third national park. In 1906, the state controlled Yosemite Valley, and Mariposa Grove came under federal jurisdiction with the rest of the park. Some of Yosemite's natural beauty is captured in the black and white landscape photographs of Ansel Adams, who at one point lived in the park and spent years photographing it. Today, over 3 million people get back to nature annually at Yosemite and check out such stunning landmarks as the 2,425-foot-high Yosemite Falls, one of the world's tallest waterfalls. There's also rock formations such as Glacier Point, Half Dome, and El Capitan, the largest granite monolith in the U.S. There's also the 3 groves of giant sequoias, the world's biggest trees. I don't recollect visiting either of these national parks, but there is high potential possibility for a future visit. On October 1st in 1920, Scientific American reports that radio will soon be used to transmit music to the home. In an 1888 novel called Looking Backward, 2000 through 1887, Arthur Edward Bellamy imagined a screen in which a time traveler from 1887 reacts to a technological advance from the early 21st century that he describes as an arrangement for providing everybody with music in their homes, perfect in quality, unlimited in quantity, suited to every mood, and beginning and ceasing at will. In Bellamy's imagination, this astonishing feat was accomplished by a vast network of wires connecting individual homes with centrally located concert halls staffed round the clock with live performers. As it turned out, this vision of the year 2000 would come to pass far sooner than Bellamy imagined, and without all the pesky wires. On October 1st in 1920, Scientific American magazine reported that the rapidly developing medium of radio would soon be used to broadcast music. A revolution in the role of music in everyday life was about to be born. It has been well known for some years that by placing a form of telephone transmitter in a concert hall or at any point where music is being played, the sound may be carried over telephone wires to an ordinary telephone receiver at a distant point. This was the beginning of the bulletin in an October 1st, 1920 issue of Popular Science Monthly. But it is only recently that a method of transmitting music by radio has been found possible, the magazine continued. Arguments about radio's origin persist to this day, but its basic workings had been understood for upwards of 20 years at the time of this announcement. It was only in the years immediately following World War I, however, that radio made the transition from scientific curiosity to practical technology. By late 1919, experiments had begun in Britain, the United States, and elsewhere that would lead to the breakthrough use of radio not just as a replacement for the telegraph, but as a communications and entertainment medium. Some of those experiments were taking place in the laboratory of the National Bureau of Standards in Washington, D.C., where station WWV was established to test various means of radio transmission. Relying significantly on amateur radio operators in the local area for feedback on its experiments, the Bureau began successfully testing the transmission of music in late 1919 and early 1920. It was those experiments that led to the public announcement in Scientific American. Music can be performed at any place, radiated into the air through an ordinary radio transmitting set, and received at any other place, even though 100 miles away. The report continued, noting that the music received can be made as loud as desired by suitable operation of the receiving apparatus. Experimental concerts are at present being conducted every Friday evening from 8:30 to 11 by the Radio Laboratory of the Bureau of Standards. Possibilities of such centralized radio concerts are great and extremely interesting, the report propagated. On October 1st in the year 1962, Johnny Carson took over for Jack Paar as host of the late-night talk program The Tonight Show. Carson went on to host The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson for 3 decades, becoming one of the biggest figures in entertainment in the 20th century. John William Carson was born on October 23rd in 1925 in Corning, Iowa. He grew up in Norfolk, Nebraska, served in the U.S. Navy in the mid-1940s, and attended the University of Nebraska. By the early 1950s, he was living in California and working in radio and the emerging medium of television. He He later moved to New York City and in 1957 became the host of the popular game show Who Do You Trust? In 1958, Carson appeared on The Tonight Show as a substitute for host Jack Paar. The Tonight Show had originated in 1951 in Los Angeles as a radio program hosted by Steve Allen. In 1954, the program moved to TV, and in 1956, Jack Paar replaced Allen as the host. Carson took over permanent hosting duties from Paar on October 1st in 1962. He hosted the show from New York City until 1972, when it relocated to Burbank, California. Each edition of The Tonight Show began with Carson's sidekick, Ed McMahon, announcing, "Here's Johnny." Carson, who became known for his relaxed, affable stage presence and dapper appearance, performed an opening monologue of jokes, punctuated by his trademark golf swing. Following the monologue, he would banter with McMahon and the show's bandleader, Doc Severinsen, and sometimes perform skits and play characters such as Karnak the Magnificent, an all-knowing seer, and the elderly Aunt Blabby. Carson then conducted celebrity interviews. The Tonight Show featured sit-downs with the day's biggest movie and TV stars, as well as athletes, politicians, singers, comedians, and animal acts. On December 17th in 1969, The Tonight Show drew its largest audience when some 58 million people tuned in for the on-air wedding of the diminutive singer Tiny Tim to a teenage fan known as Miss Vicky. As for Carson's influence on the TV industry as a whole, according to his obituary in the New York Times, throughout his career, Mr. Carson was instrumental in changing some of the bedrock ways television operated. His move to Burbank meant a realignment of American pop culture from East Coast to West Coast, from Broadway to Hollywood. And once The Tonight Show ceased to be televised live from 11:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. and began being taped in the early evening, it lost some of the spontaneity and sense of danger that live performance brings, and also eventually a half hour of its running time. The practice of taping is now the norm, and virtually all live entertainment programming on national television has become a thing of the past. After 3 decades with the hugely successful Tonight Show, Carson decided to retire. He hosted his final show on May 22nd in 1992. Comedian Jay Leno took over hosting duties the following day. Carson, who was married 4 times, stayed largely out of the public spotlight after retiring. On January 23rd in 2005, the late-night TV legend continued his eternity at the age of 79 of complications from emphysema. historic information divulged and documented on this audio file can be verified on history.com.